Good morning, everybody. We're just waiting for the Mayor before we start the meeting. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome Helen. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry we're a couple of minutes late starting. First item on the agenda is Mayor's questions and answers, and Helen and I have kind of checked that we got the questions in the right order. And so what each question, I think, has asked 2 questions. We've got 5 people altogether who've asked questions, so that's about 6 minutes in total per questioner. I invite the questioners to state their question or a summary of their question, and then Helen will reply, and that way it's easier for people in the public gallery and watching online to understand what the question Helen is answering. So Tristan, you're first. Oh, sorry, can I just apologise? We've had apologies this morning. Oh, did you say that, Jill? No, okay. From Councillor Lucy Hodge, and from Councillor Randalls. Councillor Gawley is deputising for Councillor David, and Councillor Ellie King, welcome both of you, is deputising for Councillor Blake, and she will be replacing Councillor Blake after the AGM on Friday. So welcome both of you. Sorry, and Tristan, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. My first question was on the fate of Junction 18A of the M4 and whether officers have been discussing that with central government in their discussions about funding necessary for bringing forward the Western Innovation Arc.
So we haven't explicitly discussed Junction 18A in the conversations regarding the West Innovation Arc and the work around that. You'll be aware that the West Innovation Arc in Brabazon, that is potentially a new town, and we are looking for the ability to build more housing there. But the transport solutions related to that, we are focused on being public transport solutions. So you will have seen Brabazon Station is making swift progress. We've got footbridge over this weekend or last weekend. We've got the Metro bus extension now serving Brabazon. And we're also looking at links between the north and the east fringe as part of our work around mass transit as well. We are, of course, having conversations with National Highways as well as part of that in the round, but nothing explicit around Junction 18A. And I know it's not something that's in the local plan for South Gloucestershire at the moment.
Okay, thank you. My follow-up is, are you confident, given the proposed mayoral development zone will initially have no fixed boundaries, that these proposals won't trigger a wave of preemptive and speculative planning applications within the Greenbelt?
I think speculative planning applications are a problem for us. They're a problem for us across the whole region. So we are working really closely with existing landowners to make sure that they are aware of the plans for the MDZ, the Mayoral Development Zone. And we also are looking at our own Future Places Fund, which would give us the ability to potentially look at land assembly ourselves in order to try and combat the risk of speculative applications. But I think it would be fair to say, there is a risk around that.
Okay, my third question was about North Somerset joining and whether the current constitutional model with each authority having one representative adequately reflects the region's politically diverse council chambers.
So the current membership model, which is from the 2017 order, states that members have the leader of the council, and then they nominate 2 additional members as well. So at the moment for North Somerset, obviously they're not a full member, but for the joint committee they have their leader and then 2 nominees. So we would assume that would continue, and then we would obviously look at the scrutiny and audit committees to make sure that the membership of those is reflective of the diversity of the political makeup as well.
Thank you. And my final question is, do you think there would be socioeconomic benefits from Somerset and a post-reorganisation Gloucestershire joining the West of England Combined Authority?
I think we should let's get North Somerset over the line first. No problem.
This question is from Councillor King. Ellie.
Hi, good morning. So yeah, it's great to hear that the government is aligning with WECA and rolling out free bus travel for young people. I think that's going to have amazing benefits in our local area and around the country. And I just wanted to ask, and I'm sorry if this question has been asked before, I'm new to this committee, what the impact, has it been assessed, or is there plans to assess what the future impacts of the scheme will be?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ellie. So firstly, yeah, we are really thrilled that the government has essentially lifted and shifted Kids Go Free into a national programme for the summer holidays. There are a number of other programmes around the country that are similar to Kids Go Free, but what we really like is the fact that the government has seen the kind of universality of what we've been able to do. And so, sorry, to have that coming to us in August is really good news. So Kids Go Free, we've now done it over sort of 3 holiday times. So we did the summer holiday last year, Christmas holiday and Easter holiday. And that equates to about 1.4 million free journeys that have been taken by kids across the whole region. So in the summer of last year, we saw a 32% increase on the same period the year before. Over Christmas, it was a 50% increase, and over Easter, it was a 54% increase. So that tells us that more and more people are using it. We have had some research that the University of Bristol did along with Room 13, Hareclive and the Barton Hill Activity Club, which showed us that there was 130% year-on-year increase in kids bus journeys from Hartcliffe for the 2025 summer holidays. And I think everyone on the committee knows that Hartcliffe is one of our lowest income wards. Well, it's one of the lowest income wards in the whole country, and certainly in our region. So that really does sort of tell us that the scheme is working in the right places. And we also saw uplifts in areas in the lowest 10% of the country, so 98% on average, which includes Hartcliffe and Witherwood, Twerton and Whiteway, Weston-super-Mare and Kingswood. So we are seeing that kind of uptake in the areas where we know money is tightest, which is exactly what the scheme was intended for. And we've also had some quantitative data as well, or qualitative data, I should say, in terms of 88% of parents said their children made use of the offer. 94% agreed that the free travel increased their children's opportunities and independence level. And 66% of children knew about the scheme before it started last summer, which again is, I think, really good news in terms of bringing democracy and bringing government into children's minds as well. So What we've got so far is really positive, but we'll keep getting that data and we'll keep sharing that evidence as well.
And do you have a follow-up question, Ellie?
Yes, I do, thanks. Yeah, I think it's brilliant, and the campaign has been really effective. I think it's really visible and easy to see. So I guess I was just going to talk about how bus affordability is like one element of the picture, and I want to thank you for coming to visit Hillfields recently. And one of the conversations we had there was about the reliability and frequency of buses as well, and whether that's a barrier to take up of that scheme. So I just wanted your reflection on how that's being tackled, so that families, especially in those kind of like outer regions of of the city, and I'm sure that in the wider region as well, how that can be addressed so that they can increase the take up of schemes like this.
Yeah, and I think it's of course, like we talk really positively about Kids Go Free, and obviously it is open to all children across the whole region, including on Westlink and West Local services as well. But a fair criticism would be, well, it's great, but what if you don't have a bus? Then it doesn't really mean anything, right? So we're trying to do both things at once. So by looking at kind of concessions and incentives like Kids Go Free, that's one part of what we have to do. And I think that's right, and that's important to get people on the bus, get people using public transport, used to it, and especially for our kids as well. Thinking about the Milburn review, which will come up, I'm sure, later. They talk about kids not being able to feel independent, being too anxious to leave the house. Like, these sorts of things actually really help. So I'm really confident that it's the right answer on that side. But obviously a huge part of what we have to do is to get the bus network and the whole transport network working, so that if people are living in more rural areas or living on the fringes of the city where the buses aren't as frequent or the walk to the stop is much further, how can we make this work for them? And that's everything we're doing. The bus survey that closed earlier in May, that we'll be talking about in the coming weeks, that we're listening to what people want and how we make that work. We know we've got a limited budget, but we've got to get that balance right, and we are more rural than urban in terms of our space, and so we need to be making sure that we reflect that and we design a service that works for everyone.
Thank you. Tim, your questions, you've got two questions. It's two follow-up questions in total as well.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, apologies, more buses, but
it's all right.
We know everybody loves buses. So my question is about really pushing for established status and the devolved powers that will give us. You just mentioned about money being tight. Do you see that as having a real impact on our ability to deliver the transport vision? And in particular, there's been a lot of talk recently about how bus numbers in Bristol are perhaps plateauing because higher fares are sort of creeping back in. Is that something that you would see would give us power over all fares rather than just kids? Because we really want to keep growing those bus numbers, don't we?
Yeah, so just on the Devolution Act, so the Act gained royal assent earlier in May, so that is now in statute, and there isn't anything explicit in there about bus fares, I should say, so that is sort of slightly separate. But there's two things that are happening for us at the moment. One is that we are moving towards established status, which I'm sure fellow committee members will agree is long overdue. The combined authorities that were set up at the same time versus most of them have established status and have received their first integrated settlement. What we're hoping is that we will soon receive our established status, and that will unlock, really importantly, an integrated settlement. Most likely, I would imagine that we'll get that sort of 2028, 29, that financial year. So it's a little way off, but probably the soonest we could get it, being completely honest. And so that will give us more financial powers, more choice of how we spend our money. So whether we choose to spend that on public transport will be a matter for committee still, so it wouldn't be right for me to comment. But it does, the integrated settlement combined with the Devolution Act does give us more duties around, for example, rail, and having more of a role around strategic rail and how we might want rail services to operate. It also gives us the capacity to borrow. and to work more on bigger infrastructure investment programs. So in terms of mass transit, bus reform, those types of things, it does unlock different avenues. Nothing, we're a long way from deciding how that money will be spent, and that will obviously be done through the committee. But I think it does take us to a new place in terms of our transport vision, and how we make the transport infrastructure and the network work better for us.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. We've obviously had a heat wave in the last week, and I think a lot of people have been very uncomfortable on our buses. The new electric ones are air-conditioned, but they're not everywhere at the moment. I was wondering, when we can expect them on all our major routes, if you have an update on that.
Yeah, so we've got, Bath depot has now become electrified, so we're introducing more green buses into Bath, and you might have seen that we've also converted some of the old diesel buses into electric to come out of the Bath depot, which is really good news. So we're kind of operating now for the first time 2 kind of electric fleets, the brand new buses and then the converted. We have got more buses arriving this year. I don't have the exact number, I'm sorry. And as there's more rounds of Zebra funding, which is the funding that comes from UK government for the electric buses, we'll continue to apply for that. But I do think, and I'll fact check this, but I do think we've probably got more than most of the other major cities at the moment. We are kind of leading the way on electric buses for sure. But I agree with you. I think last summer, which was another really hot summer, the feedback we got was that having the aircon on the green buses really made a significant difference.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mayor.
Hiya.
So my first question is on the Brownfield Housing Fund. I think that's the right name. So whilst I agree in principle that we do need to take action to bring forward our stalled sites, I can think of a few prominent ones around Bristol. I'm concerned that we're simply just handing money to developers to beef up their profit margins. So what do we, and I mean the collective we as the region, get for our investment in these sites?
So the simple answer to that is an estimated 1,000 to 1,500 homes for that 45 million. So I think everyone would agree we have got a severe housing crisis in our part of the world. The previous mayor chose not to take Brownfields fund. So the reason we didn't have it before was because of that. So I have worked really hard with colleagues in government to ensure that we got our allocation, and we are some way behind some of my colleagues, my mayoral colleagues. So I'm genuinely delighted that we've managed to get this, and our allocation is also quite significant compared to other places. We are absolutely not in the business of handing out money to developers to help them reach their profit margins. We will be looking at all the stalled sites across the region, so those that have planning permission, but for one reason or another are not viable. Sometimes, what we know, there are several reasons for that, whether that's to do with planning conditions, whether that's to do with not having the workforce ready to go, whether that's due to material costs, which, as we all know, are rising significantly. So there are all sorts of reasons why sites are not so viable. But we will be working really carefully to make sure that we get that investment back. So we're not looking at grant, we're looking at investment in the main, in terms of how we spend that, how we allocate that money. But it's also really important to say that there's that the Subsidy Control Act of 2022 is our kind of legislative safeguard, if you like, to make sure that, whenever we're working with the private sector, that this is not about subsidy, this is about investment and releasing the funds to make sure that we get the homes that we desperately need.
Thank you. And I didn't know that about the previous mayor, but not the only strange thing that happened under his reign. So as a follow-up question on that one, please. So the paper proposes quite a high level, quite a wide-reaching delegation to officers the paper itself, you've mentioned sort of the mechanisms by which that money could be distributed, but it's not really set out in the paper because we don't know yet. Do you think it's an appropriate sort of delegation to make at this point before that sort of governance and principles are in place and agreed by the committee?
I'm not going to comment on that because until I've got more of the information in front of me, I wouldn't want to. But what I would say is that we really need to move at pace. And so when we're talking about delegations, I think there's a balance between obviously making sure that we're doing things at the right level and that we're working across the committee and that we've got the right scrutiny to make sure that we're making good decisions and we're spending money well. But what we can't do any longer is add further delays for the sake of delay when we really need to move things forward. One of the reasons these sites are stalled is that the planning system, for example, across the whole region is quite slow. And I know lots of things are happening in the UAs to try and speed that up. So I see this as part of the solution. And what I wouldn't want to do is add further delay to what could be a solution which will give us the homes that we know our residents desperately need.
Thank you.
No problem.
So my second question was on the investment plan. So it's pretty wide-reaching and all-encompassing of basically everything that WECA does. And I understand that something being on the plan doesn't mean it's approved. It has to go through the process. Absolutely fine. If something's not in that plan, does that mean it's not a priority at the moment?
I think you're right. The plan is really wide-ranging. So everything on the plan, you should be able to see evidence of it elsewhere, i.e. it will be in the transport vision or it will be in the growth strategy or the child poverty action plan. So most of the work that we do, I would imagine, would relate back to one of those documents. However, it's completely iterative. So there will be new priorities that come through, whether they're my political priorities or whether they're to do with changing economic times or new powers from government or new funding that comes from government. So it does need to be iterative, and I don't think it's sort of written in stone in terms of that we can't come back and add and amend to it.
Thanks. So as a follow-up on that one, we heard last time that the bus plan and the bus reform pieces of work are two separate pieces of work. We clarified that with Emma. But the words bus reform don't appear in the investment plan at all. Is that an oversight or is that not an investment priority at the moment?
It's probably somewhere in the middle, to be quite honest with you. So bus reform is absolutely something that I'm thinking about and talking about all the time. And the bus survey we wanted to do because we wanted to get that baseline of where people in the region feel our services are. You would have heard me say before that one of my big frustrations is not having the data to understand exactly how good or how bad our services are or how well or not they are improving. And so the bus plan enables us to do that and enables us to push the operators to give us more of that data and information. And then what comes from that will be the path we go down in terms of bus reform. So that it's definitely not an intentional omission, as in this isn't of interest to me right now. It's very much front and centre of what we do. So I think that's probably the fairest way I can answer that.
Thanks very much, Toby. And I've got two questions. The first of which relates to the skills strategy and Westpac in particular. And my question is that the moment 16 to 18 education and training provision falls outside the current responsibilities of the combined authority. Are you able to reassure the committee that funding for the proposed Westpac will come from additional funding and not from the funding that the authority now allocates to adult education?
Yeah, I can reassure the committee on that there would be no intention to remove any. I wouldn't be able to remove any adult skills funding into the Westpac. However, the Westpac, which probably not everyone will know what that means at this stage, but the Westpac, so the skills strategy, which is going to be taken to committee this Friday, essentially we look at our skills system in three ways, one of which is our young people, one of which is barriers to work for working age adults, and the third part is lifelong learning. And I'm sure everyone is aware of the Milburn review that was published last week, and some of the work and the comments around that talk about you know, an extraordinary number of young people who are not in education, employment or training, and there are lots of reasons for that. But what has to be true is that this is not a problem that starts at the age of 19. And so what we cannot do is talk to 19-year-olds and try and unpick all the things that may have happened to them, or that they will have experienced, or that they would have felt probably since they were in year 4 or 5 in primary school. And so what we're talking about with that young people's pillar, and more in more detail with the West of England Baccalaureate, is finding a way so that we can engage with our young people at the earliest possible point about what the world of work means, and enabling them to have the confidence in themselves and in their skills that may not just be academic skills. So the Westback will look at communication skills. It will look at those young people who might be young carers who do the family budgeting because mum or dad are too ill to do so, and enabling them to see the value that they can bring to the workplace. So we will design it with training providers, but we will also design it with employers and also with young people themselves. So I think it's a really important thing that we do this, because we have to turn the tide on what is a really dangerous and frankly sad situation that too many young people see themselves in. And the other thing I should add is that the mayors, when the mayors come together, which we very often do, our number one ask of government is around more powers in the post-16 space. And so whilst we are developing what the Westback looks like, with the idea being that, you know, integrated settlement is coming, so we would look to be able to fund it through integrated settlement, we also anticipate that we may receive more powers in that post-16 space. So it's preemptive in a way, but it's also integral to what I want to achieve in my time as mayor.
Thank you. And my second question relates to the proposed expansion of Bristol Airport.
Yeah.
So the public consultation on the proposed expansion of the airport to 15 million passengers a year closes on 28th of June.
Mm-hmm.
You previously stated that new laws being put forward in Parliament look set to provide regional mayors with new powers on planning, and that your responsibility would be to carefully consider the details of individual planning applications at the appropriate stage, looking at the evidence. The application to expand Bristol Airport will result in unacceptably high carbon emissions, noise pollution, traffic congestion, and intrusion of the airport services onto common land. There's no obvious evidence in the recent devolution bill that there is any impediment to you feeding into this consultation. Please, can you tell the committee what is your opinion on the proposed expansion of Bristol Airport? So
there are two things that are happening that will tell you why I can't do that. One is the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Act, as I said earlier, received royal assent since our last meetings, and that does give call-in powers to mayors outside of London for the first time. The second thing is that North Somerset is obviously considering the application. Bristol Airport is in North Somerset, but subject to agreement on Friday and to ministerial approval, they are hoping to join the West of England Combined Authority. So given that reality and the responsibility that comes with those new potential planning powers, I don't think it would be the right thing for me to pass comment on the planning application at this stage. And I wouldn't want to do anything that would prejudice any further role I might have, but it also sets a precedent, I think, in terms of how I plan to work with those new powers, which would be to keep my counsel.
Thank you. And I know that there'll be lots of people who are disappointed that you're not able as a regional leader to express your views, or you don't feel able at this stage to express your views on such an important regional issue. On the linked subject of climate change, I noticed in the building flyers for the People's Emergency Briefing, which is showing, which is a very important sort of short kind of documentary by Chris Packham, which has been presented to Parliament. I wonder whether you've had an opportunity to look at that, to watch that yet, and whether you intend to.
Yes, I do intend to. So I was invited to the initial screening last year at the Central Methodist Hall that parliamentarians and other politicians were invited to. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to that, but I'm delighted that we've got, I think, at least 3 screenings that I know of in the next couple of months in the region that I've been invited to. So I will make sure that I am at least one of those. I don't know which one yet because I can't recall my diary, but I know that it's in the diary and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Jerome.
The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. I'm happy to propose those minutes as being an accurate record. I wonder if I could have a seconder for those, please. Yeah, thank you very much, Tristan. Noted. Next item is any declarations of interest. None today. We're now moving on to items from the public. We've received a number of valid questions which have been published along with their responses on the website. 2 of those questions were addressed to me personally, and on the advice of the monitoring officer, I've replied to those questions personally. We've also received 9 valid statements which have been published on the MCA on the Combined Authority website. Some of those people submitting statements have indicated they'd like to speak today. Please note that if you are here, that you've got 3 minutes speaking time, which Jill will keep an eye on, and we'll give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left. In accordance with the Constitution, we're expecting that you speak to or read only the statement you've submitted and which has been accepted. If you deviate from that statement, you may be asked to stop speaking. So I'd like to ask the following people to speak. We've got Rosa Kell, Jackie Head, Elaine Workman, Caroline Dunn and Joe Sargent. So welcome to you all. And Rosa, you're first.
Thank you very much. My question was about electrification of Wells depot, and obviously all the buses around us in Bristol, Weston, Bath are being electrified. Or
Rosa, I think your microphone might not be on.
Sorry about that. I'll repeat again. Wells Depot hasn't any plans for electrification. I know it's just over the border, but it's a first bus depot, and of course all the buses are around us at Bath, Bristol and Weston are being electrified or are electrified, and therefore Wells is being left out. We would appreciate your help in getting that organised. We also would very much like your help in letting us know what's happening with regards to the services that are going to be put in places after the 31st, 26th of July. There's a lot of concern. People are very concerned. They don't know where they're going, how they're going to get to work, how they're going to get their school children to school in October, in September. We need access on the 99, 91. We need access in and out of Keynsham. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing because I can't see my own notes and I didn't type them out. I'll leave it there, but thank you very much.
And Jackie Head. Thank you, Rosa.
Just to clarify, I've written a long statement which I'd invite you to read in detail, but here are the highlight points that I want to make from that statement. Proper community engagement should be the foundation of all decision making within WECA. Our group believes this is not happening in relation to the tendering and redesign of supported bus services. Without genuine consultation, new routes risk failing the very people they are meant to serve. The X91 was developed with the community over 18 months through the West Local scheme. When WECA retendered the service in April, 2 of the 8 rural bus stops were effectively cut off. You can no longer travel from Chew Magna to Bristol, nor return from Bristol to Dundry. A bus that only works one way is not a functioning service. Had we been part of the decision making, this ridiculous situation could have been avoided. Now a new network is being proposed, yet attempts to engage with officers have resulted in only partial information. A map and proposed timetables flashed on a screen, and insufficient detail provided to give meaningful feedback. Despite this, we have repeatedly responded and repeatedly felt unheard. Clearly, our group is not happy with any outcome that carves up the successful X91 route. The proposal we have seen halves the number of villages served. But we're not here simply because we disagree with the outcome. We're here because we believe the process has not met the standards required by public bodies, and we would like the Scrutiny Committee to examine how far they believe meaningful public engagement has taken place in the recent tendering process, and particularly in relation to the X91. So, to paraphrase, was the X91 actually put out to tender like for like as the existing route as promised? Did the tender comply with the Public Contracts Relations 2015? Did the consultant make use of documentary evidence we provided? Were there any written community engagement materials? What data sets were considered in planning the network? Did the process follow appropriate governance and record-keeping practices? And what financial modelling was used, and did it factor in the additional costs of extending the hours of Westlink? Did the process comply with best value, the public sector equality duty and rural proofing? Our group has frequently demonstrated the value of the X91 as a single direct route serving 8 villages. We've shown that Westlink doesn't work in our area, and we've highlighted inequalities in the frequency of services in our area as opposed to other areas. Please don't allow all the voluntary hours we have put in to consulting with our community to be swept away. We've offered a pragmatic, sensible solution to providing a network that retains the X91. And if this is not being considered, 3 minutes, please help us understand why.
Thank you, Jackie.
I've got a number of supplementary documents that I'd like you to have as the chair, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will respond. Yeah, thank you. And the next statement is from Elaine Workman.
Thank you, Chair, members. Is this working? Hi. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for hearing this second submission on behalf of the Chew Valley Sustainable Transport Partnership. We firmly believe that all community engagement should come from, should be underpin all the decision making made by the WECA. Yet in the development of the post-July supported bus routes, we have seen little evidence of structured engagement, transparent analysis, or accessible decision-making records. These gaps matter because they shape the quality, the legality, and the fairness of this final network. We believe that community engagement materials have not been taken into consideration into the July tendered process, and if they were not shared to our group in the Chew Valley. The only engagement activities we've experienced were those organised by our own group, to which WECA officers and Baines were invited. We therefore are asking the Scrutiny Committee to obtain and review all engagement materials that were part of the tendered X91 or Chew Valley services. The presentations, leaflets, the online content, surveys, were they considered as part of the tender process? Any instructions or guidance that was issued to the engagement of staff or to contractors, and an explanation for why no such materials were produced or circulated should they not be forthcoming. We also request that the community feedback is shown in the engagement process. We ask that the committee seek the full consultation analysis report, full or anonymised data showing responses across the BANES area, evidence of how feedback influenced decisions. Without this, it's very hard to see how the community views were meaningfully incorporated. We also
with 30 seconds left
that the financial modelling is also considered within this process, because we believe that the X91 was tendered. We've been told it has. However, we wish to see that has been shown with the correct current route as it currently stands without any amendments, but also to the proposed route that is also under consideration has use of West
3 minutes,
which we believe does not have has been costed. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. And Caroline Dunn next, please.
Hello, the heat is making me breathless, so I hope you will give me a bit extra allowance. I want to elaborate on trams and bus stop safety. The tram line in Edinburgh from the airport to Newhaven is very, very popular, joins up loads of useful places and goes along Princess Street every 7 to 10 minutes. Now, if they can have trams doing that, we can have trams going up the A38. We need to be ahead of the wave. I want you to set up a scrutiny research group to look into the costs and feasibility of a tram line from the Puggo roundabout at the bottom of Stokescroft out to a Thornbury hub in the first instance. We should apply to central government for money for this transport of the future. All cities start with one tram line and then they build because it's such a good idea. Edinburgh is currently planning a major extension, a north-south line, and they have already got also a third one in the works. We need to start now. I would also like to say I have sat on a variety of different meetings in the city where they have pulled up and discussed violence against women and girls, but as only a one-off meeting in their series. It is the case that there's currently no women's group in Bristol politically raising the awareness of this issue, apart from the Red Dress Crafters group, of which I am a member. Now, it seems to me we need to have a violence against women and girls committee that actually has as its main and primary focus discussing this every meeting, every month of 6 weeks, not tokenism because it's a politically hot topic. I say that although it's actually effectively lukewarm because there's very little active change I see in Bristol. And I would like to say, for example, I think rural bus stops are a key point of vulnerability for both women and disabled people. And I think you should build a requirement into your contracts that no funding is given out in future unless a project provides at least some progressive step on these issues built in as a part of it. For example, at least 8 new bus stops with solar panels providing lighting and an emergency phone service, perhaps also CCTV depending on the place in point.
30 seconds.
Seating, suitable curbs, and so forth. This will ensure that some progressive action is actually taken. And that's in connection with bus stops, which were not doing anything for disabled people before. We must stop building like the past, merely to tread water at best. We need to build in promoting progression. And finally, just as a final thing, I do want to say, because it is a matter of safety.
3 minutes.
To all disabled people, to all women, and to people in general, I'm still extremely concerned about fire engine access to areas of the EBLN. And please, can you scrutinise opening up Victoria Avenue, which I think would greatly alleviate the problem to that particularly dense patch with very small roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
And thank you for the extra allowance. I appreciate it.
Jo Sargent.
Good morning. Yeah, am I on? Yes. Yeah, so my statement is predominantly about how this authority is perceived by the public, and particularly your role as a committee in that with regards to openness and transparency. So obviously I work for Reclaim Our Buses, and we do understand that there are time constraints on both yourselves as councillors who don't get paid to do this role and your officers that support you. And we recognise that there are lots of different topics that need to go onto your agenda. However, we feel that you need to increase your focus on passenger transport because of the strategic role that this authority plays. And in particular, more attention needs to be paid to the lack of clarity and transparency that seems, if anything, to be increasing. And evidence of this includes the withholding of a report on bus franchising that was commissioned from the public purse, as well as a seemingly finger in the air approach to the proposed allocations of £500 million in the draft local transport delivery plan. While the £500 million is nowhere enough for a significant capital project such as a tram, it is still a significant sum of money, and that could be used to start to address the West's transport problems. And we've heard various examples of, you know, the basic kind of meeting basic transport needs. And without transparency, we're concerned that much of this money is going to be wasted on expensive consultants, probably from outside the region, and developing speculative long-term projects. Instead, it could be used to build up in-house expertise and longer-term staff capacity, as well as for projects that can offer more immediate benefits to the people of the West of England. Case in point. Using commercial sensitivity as an excuse to keep people in the dark about future plans is not the way a progressive democratic governing body should be going about its business.
30 seconds left.
Whilst access to some data may be restricted, the default setting should not be a complete block. And it does, to us, demonstrate a lack of commitment to engaging with the public, particularly with regard to public transport, while buses continue to be unreliable, infrequent, and sometimes non-existent. So I would just say, bear in mind what the Information Commissioner said. The strong case for openness and transparency in your affairs when balancing public interest arguments, and it's part of your responsibility 3 minutes to make sure that is kept in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo, and thank you very much to everybody who contributed to public statements this morning. So that concludes the public statement part of the meeting. And you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, where you will hear a number of the areas that you raised concerns about being discussed. So thank you. We're now moving on to Chair's announcements and the work plan report. The items that I want to cover in the upcoming items, we've had offers from the transport officers of 2 additional briefings on transport between now and October. And October is obviously quite an important time from the point of view of submissions to the TCR funding, which we've heard raised in public statements, and also work taking place on bus reform as well. So we'll be very much looking at I'll be very much looking at work with members of the committee as to what we would like to see covered in those briefings. Additionally, we've had an offer, if we would like it, of a skills strategy briefing as well, because there's obviously a lot that's sitting inside that skills strategy, which is going to need fleshing out. So Jill or I will be in touch about looking at good dates for those. Are there any comments on the kind of work plan to date? I think the other item I'll pick up on the work plan is that we had hoped to have a visit to Brabazon. Because of the launch of the new town in that area, it wasn't quite the right time to be doing that when we've been thinking about it in sort of February, March, but I'll be discussing with Jill picking that back up again now that the government's plans and the authorities' plans for investigating further on the new town have been formalised a little bit. So any comments on the work plan to date from members, and then any requests for future items to be considered in the work plan. And Mark, you're first, and then Toby.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, I was actually going to raise this. The paperwork today very much feels like death by page numbers. I mean, this is just an immense amount. When you were talking about the briefing, I was going to suggest we have to have some transport briefings potentially over the summer, possibly August, although no one really likes doing that. But it's probably the only window where none of us are slammed with committees. I'm getting stares already. But in the combined committee report, I think in October, they're taking the transport strategy and the bus plan. I would really like to spend a bit of time, not 10 minutes rushed at a meeting where we get 500 pages to digest, of actually having that explained and walked through. So if I could ask, if at all possible, I'd like an early briefing on those.
Thanks, Chair. So if I heard you correctly, the bus reform, we're getting a session on that at some point in the near future. It's a complicated topic, so ahead of that, well in advance of that session, could we have access to the report that ARUP have made as a committee, noting that in the terms of reference that are being adopted at the end of this week, we do have an explicit right of access to documentation.
Thank you. And if we can make sure that those are noted as actions to go onto our action sheet, that would be great. Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Certainly, I'd like to echo Mark's comments about the amount of work which we're already scrutinising in this meeting in terms of the 700 odd pages, which is huge. You know, and it makes you very wary of suggesting more to do. But there are 4 areas that and some of these are on the agenda for that meeting on Friday, but things that, you know, I would like us to look at. One is the supported bus programme and the way that is managed. It seems to be a very shadowy process that often causes a lot of strife in local communities when it finally gets unveiled, usually just a few days before deadlines and that kind of thing. So I'd really like to understand how that process works and what we do. I'd like to look at the new stations programme, because we've been told for 2 years that we're looking at new stations. But whenever I ask, you know, where we are with that, I get told nothing. So I'd really like to know progress with that. And then the other 2, the enhanced partnership, I'd really like us to know what's going on within our enhanced partnership meetings, so that we can understand what's discussed there and what the issues are, because we're told that it's getting bigger and better. But I'd really like to know a bit more about that. And finally, mass transit, and just the fact that we've got a pledge that within 5 years we'll be delivering something. But I'd really like to know, you know, the course we're on and how we're looking at that and what the programme involves. So everybody, I'm sure, will be very pleased to know that I've suggested all those extra things for us to look at.
Thank you. And I can see that some of those might sit as just quite chunky headings inside the transport strategy as key initiatives. So, you know, I think it's balancing. No, I think let's speak. Tristan. Right.
Just flagging it, probably not for now, but given you spoke of a trip to Brabazon, it'd be helpful once we get more clarity on the new town, perhaps for a wider visit across the mayoral development zone.
Any other comments on the work plan, either comments on the work plan to date or thoughts for future work. Okay.
Just on the Brabazon, I don't think if we're going to do Brabazon, probably shouldn't do it on its own. It should be the Western Arc because it seems to link in with it. Quite things.
Thank you. Councillor King. Again,
without knowing what's already happened on this committee, so feel free to say you've already put the skills strategy and thinking about the Milburn report and the recommendations that are going to come out in the autumn around that, and the intersection between those two things and how we're implementing that in the region. That would be of great interest to me. Again, without knowing what you guys have already had briefings on around that.
No, we've had kind of minimal briefings, but nor have we requested it either. So it's not a challenge in this instance. But I'll take on board all these suggestions. Look at the diary with Jill and with the officers, and come up with something that's as manageable as possible. David, Councillor Anderson, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the Western Arc thing, it would probably be worth asking for a focus on the infrastructure plans specifically. Because that, I think, would have a major impact on how viable the whole Western Innovation Arc project actually is.
Thank you. Just making note of that. Very good. Two items from the joint committee meeting on Friday. Before we do that, I just wanted to note that under the work plan, I should have said that it had been anticipated that the constitutional review would be coming to the June cycle of meetings. But because of the passing of the devolution bill and the anticipated joining of North Somerset into WECA, this review is coming later in the year. Is that going to come to the October meeting, Bob?
Indeed, Chair. Yep, the comprehensive review, rather than taking it in pieces, not reflecting the changes in the legislation, we're going to take the whole a bigger piece to the October, and that'll go through the normal process. So there'll be briefings for this group. It'll go through audit for their consideration and comment, and will come into committee in October. So the normal consultation process to get to committee will be followed as well.
Thanks very much. So we're going to go on to the budget papers for Friday first of all, and we got James Kinane-Nealon here, and James will also take any questions on the joint committee papers, which are at the very end of Friday's papers, to just use your time effectively. Just to say also that we're not covering all items for Friday's meeting, or we're not expecting to. You're obviously free to sort of raise them as items to be discussed. So, for example, the comments that I'm making or the report from this committee is just for noting out only, unless anybody's got any challenges to it, in which case do say, and we'll I can reference those on Friday. And there's a couple of other items that Jill and I thought it was appropriate to leave off. Okay, so James, any kind of highlights that you want to pick up from the MCA mayoral budget outturn?
I think just a quick summary. So final position for 25-26 was revenue outturn of £174 million. So it was £8 million, about 4% lower than the current budget. But 1.9 million over our Q3 forecasts, so a little bit more money out the door than we anticipated at that point. I mean, the underspend versus current budget is primarily driven by reduced delivery across programme areas, sort of across the piece. On the capital side, expenditure was just short of 204 million for the financial year, just 35.2 million pounds, so about 15% lower than the current budget, which was about 239 million pounds. That pretty much follows trend from previous years, where we're seeing still quite a lot of optimism in the capital programme. If anyone's got any questions.
Thank you. I'll start with some questions on the shortfall on the skills bootcamp and the 6.7 million on the investment fund, kind of on pages 30-31. Do you think any of those problems could have been avoided if project management had been different?
It's probably quite difficult for me to say. I would say on the skills bootcamp, there was, we know that there is historically, we don't spend the full allocation. It's quite difficult to do it because of the way that they pay out based on outcome. So I think there was probably some initially too much optimism, so it probably looks a slightly worse picture in terms of delivery than it actually is in reality. But I think it'd be difficult for me to comment on that.
Okay, thank you. And on page 32, there's 22% investment fund spending going on grant management and assurance. And I just sort of, that seems quite high. I just wonder what your comments were about that, or whether that's the way things are classified.
So that's just the way I think that we classify things at the moment. We're actually making that change this financial year to be a little bit clearer. So it's just historically everything in investment fund just sat under grant management and insurance because they managed it, but we're doing it by theme for this financial year, so it's easier.
Thanks very much. Questions from Tim?
Yeah, Chair, I don't know whether I'll be able to get answers to these questions. They're mainly around transport, and I don't know whether you'll have the answers here. But one question on page 25 under transport delivery, it says we've seen a net reduction over bus grant, BSIP and levy, which has allowed 8 million to be added to reserves. That seems confusing to me because it reads as if we've received less money and therefore we've been able to put more money into reserves. Is that just because of the way that that is phrased, because I don't see how, if all those grants have come down, we're able to put more money into reserves.
I think it's just the way I phrased it.
Right.
So I'll take the blame on that one. It's just that we received exactly the same amount in terms of grant. We've just spent less than anticipated. So it's all gone to reserves. It's all earmarked. It will still all be spent on buses.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Also on page 25, we've underspent on the rapid transit project. I would have thought that surely is a major priority for the region at the moment. I was wondering why we've underspent this year on that.
I think realistically it would probably be better for Emma to field this question.
Hi, thank you. In essence, we are building a team within the Combined Authority to take forward the mass transit programme. That started with the recruitment of our head of mass transit, who joined us in December, which was later than we would have liked, and we're now going through recruitment processes, etc., to build the team. So we're slightly behind on the spend, but there's lots of action happening. So we'll be ready to catch that up and carry on, because we recognise the importance of that programme.
Okay, thank you. Another one you might be able to have with page 31. It says the original budget was 1.2 million funding from CAS for these services, and now it looks like it's gone down to 490,000. So less CAS money has been required than originally expected, I think is what it's saying there. Is this money from both Bristol's CAS and Bath's CAS, or is it all Bristol? And do we know how much Bristol had originally, if it's both, do we know what percentage of that was Bristol's commitment?
I think it is all Bristol. Can we take it away and come back to you with the exact numbers and the breakdown?
I mean, it seems like the same amount of money is still being spent, but some of the money's been found somewhere else. But it'd be useful to know that. Yeah, thanks. And finally, last question for me on this page 34, item 53, Bristol to Bath corridor project in Bristol. Do we have a start date for this?
So the Bristol to Bath strategic corridor is on is akin with the CRSTS delivery timescale. So that's contractually committed by March 27, completed by March 29.
So it has to start work by March 27. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions there? Are we ready to move on to the investment funds? Yeah, Tristan.
Just a quick one on the transport levy, and I raise it every time, so I'll raise it again. We know the pressures on supported transport. Are we going to be examining the case for mayoral precepting? We're talking a lot about the potential new powers and funding coming to this authority. We look at the bigger, more established combined authorities where they do have precepting powers. The transport levy is a legacy of the establishment of this combined authority, and I still don't think in the long term it has much of a place in our plans for sustained for supported transport.
I think that's probably more of a strategic question, isn't it, for the mayor, really? Yeah, okay. So I'd suggest that we don't take that one now, but hold it and perhaps ask it in October again. Thank you. So unless there are any other questions on that, then we're going to move on to the investment fund and grant assurance and delivery assurance. Oh, there was one. Yes, if there are any questions on the outturn for the joint committee, I don't think we particularly need an overview of that. It's more just, I don't want any, last minute questions saying, oh, James isn't here anymore. Yeah. No, there was one more thing I wanted to pick up on the under 15 bus travel, because given that sounds like it's getting central government funding, whether that's going to have an impact on the budget for fares and ticketing. Okay. Yep. Sorry, Emma.
Yeah, so the Kids Go Free project is currently within our budget allocation for the fares incentives. Now that we know that that's becoming a national thing, we'll need to revisit that when we fully understand how that's going to work in practical terms with the central government offer, and then there'll effectively be some funding left in that pot that would be then free to allocate.
Okay, so basically it's some nice additional funding by the sounds of it.
Yes.
Okay, lovely, thank you. That's great, thanks very much. And so Pete Davis. Okay, you're hiding. And could you, officers, could you say your role, please, when you before you start speaking? That'd be great. So.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Pete Davis, Head of Grant Management and Assurance.
Thank you.
Would it be helpful if I give a
just the brief overview would be great.
Of course. So this report provides a regular update on the investment fund programme. 2 recommendations relate specifically to the investment fund. Firstly, a delegation to enable progress with the distribution hub, for which funds were earmarked at the January committee. And the delegation is in order to facilitate prompt action should a suitable site be available. Secondly, an allocation of 5 million to support the Nature Recovery Fund to support the delivery of the local nature recovery strategy, with a delegation, business cases for the specific interventions to come back to committee. 2 recommendations relate to authority to administer new external funding awards, £869,000 of cladding remediation funding and £200,000 of Homes England funding to support the Strategic Place Partnership. The final 2 recommendations in the report relate to revised arrangements for the delivery of 2 transport funding awards, being zero emission buses and the zero emission transport city.
Any questions for Pete? Yep, Toby.
It's a fairly general question about this fund. Just to understand what the process is for bringing in new items, new projects into the fund. I mean, we see this end of the process, which is when things have arrived at committee for a decision. But on the left-hand side, how does Bristol City Council or Baines, put in a new project and get it funded under this programme?
As we are moving towards the integrated settlement, as you probably know, we've been putting in place a lot of improvements to the way we try and link individual investment decisions to plans and strategies. So the growth strategy had an outcomes framework attached to it. It was approved last year. Investment plans are this week's committee items. They set more of a focus for the interventions that we want to put through. Those investment plans are in turn linked to the 6 thematic areas that we will be working to under the integrated settlement. So that sets the overarching framework. And then if you look, if you like, at this sort of the bottom up level, there is a business case development process. So outline business case, full business case. There is what we call our decision pathway process, a new piece of internal governance to ensure consistent passage of ideas into ultimately decisions that come to the committee. And we have streamlined the way we work with the unitary authorities recently. We now have something called the Joint Regional Directors Forum. So all of the relevant senior managers from across all the unitary authorities come together to review all of the process and all the passage of those ideas and concepts through the business case process. So it's a system that is much more aligned to the strategy and a much more efficient and consistent one now.
Any other questions for Pete? Ellie.
Hi, I had a few on the distribution hub. It's really exciting to see the plans for that come forward and seeing a bit more detail on it. It's seeing it, that multi-bank offer will make it sort of a really efficient and accessible way to get household goods that people really need. And I love that there was a point made to an emphasis for fresh food as well within document. So making sure that fresh proteins and fruit and veg are made accessible, which should be a universal right, but often isn't the case. And that's a really key point I think that was made in the document. Just on the practicalities of it, I wanted to ask about the securing of a site and to ask about what the key criteria is around that and the key risks in securing that site and what happens if one can't be found quickly.
Hi, thanks for the question. And yeah, it's, to be honest, securing the right space is going to be a real challenge. We know that there's really quite significantly constrained industrial market at the moment. At the moment, we're competing with the private sector for sites, hence why we've asked for the delegation in the paper in the way that we have, because we will need to move quite quickly should the right space become available. We have a document which sets out what the specification is, and that's based on the work that FareShare Southwest and Bristol Charities have done before. So they've basically sort of specced out the requirements of what sort of building, what sort of outdoor space for to enable vehicle to kind of access and you know, get the food into the store and get it out again. So there's quite a kind of clear set of requirements. Ideally, we'd like it to be somewhere centrally in the west of England, because obviously it's a project that we want to benefit the whole of the region. So getting, you know, being accessible to all parts of the region is really important as well. I think, you know, we've just recently bid on a site and we weren't successful. So we've got some further thinking to do about whether we continue to compete in the market or whether we take a different approach and try and secure an off-market deal, working with investors to sort of get them to buy into the vision, really. So yeah, that will be the most challenging bit, I think, of this. Once we've got the site, we're all really excited about what's going to happen.
Okay, I've got a few more if that's all right, Chair. So I wanted to understand about engagement and consultation with the sector as well. I read that a lot of work's been done with FareShare and Bristol Charities, but I work with a lot of the frontline organisations, community organisations, the VCSE sector, who are often delivering these programmes. And so I guess I wanted some assurance that as the project progresses, that there is that wider engagement with the delivery partners who are often working in a voluntary capacity and have very limited ability to engage with these things, but really would welcome that engagement. A few of them have come to me and voiced that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can. We absolutely want to do that. I think it's sort of the last question. It's quite a complex project at the moment. Our priority is to secure a site. I think once we've got that site, then absolutely we want this to be the start of the programme that's going to have a regional benefit. We see that as a real opportunity. Let's prove the opportunity, then, you know, that it can start to have an impact, and then let's work. We want to work with the whole sector across the region to build capability, capacity, and who knows, in the future have a hub and spoke model. But at the moment, our priority is to try and secure a site, and that's proving quite challenging at the moment. So absolutely, we want to make sure that the benefits are spread across the whole region, and we will work with the VCS sector in all the UAs to sort of help us to understand what those opportunities are.
Okay. One more, if I may. So the Bristol City Council, I'm sure all the other constituents authorities as well, looking at the new Crisis Resilience Fund, formerly the Household Support Fund, that's coming from government. And there's a really strong emphasis that within that multi-year funding model, we'll move from a more of a crisis response to more that's one thinking of longer term resilience and helping families plan and manage their lives and get the support that they need to develop resilience. So I was just wondering if there's any thought going into the design of the model, which I don't quite have a clear picture yet of what it looks like, to embed some of those support services within the wider model to help make it a more holistic offer.
Yes, definitely. So that's absolutely something that we want to make sure is part and parcel of the project. Clearly, its primary aim is to support families who are in crisis and to help them address that crisis at that time. But we also want to make sure that there are opportunities to link the people who are getting support from the hub into that kind of wider range of support, so that they can, whether it's skills training, whether it's access to other services that they need, that can also be provided as well. So definitely, let's be honest, in an ideal world we wouldn't need something like this. So absolutely, we want to get people at the point of crisis, but we also want to make sure that it's supporting them to not need to use the hub in the future.
Great, thank you.
Thank
I had one on the Nature Recovery Fund, but
yeah.
Could I just ask one on the same item?
Okay.
Is that okay?
That would be sensible, yes. You okay with that, Ellie?
Thanks, Emily. I just wanted to understand the ownership model of the hub. So just if I understand correctly, WECA will own the hub as an asset and retain that ownership. Will they then lease it to Bristol Charities, who then sublease the space to the users as required, or what does it look like?
So we're looking at the model at the moment. We're getting some legal advice on it because there are different structures that we could deploy. I think the simplest one is probably that it would be governed by a grant funding agreement. So Bristol Charities would probably own the asset, but there would be a grant funding agreement that would give us the right to benefit from any value when the asset was sold. Does that make sense? So it's quite complicated, and we're getting some legal advice on it to make sure that we're doing it in the right way and with all the appropriate safeguards in place. But at the moment, that seems like the most likely and simplest form of support that we can provide.
Thank you, John. And Ellie, your question on Nature Recovery Fund.
thank you, Chair. I want to ask a potentially messy and conflating question about the Nature Recovery Fund and the forthcoming skills strategy, and again with the Milburn review in the back of my mind. So I'm quite mindful of lots of conversations I have with partners who work in food sustainability, the Forest of Avon as well, and the parks teams that we have in the council about a lack of diversity in those workforces, and a lack of young entrants coming through as well, and if there is potential for some of that funding to go towards attracting the jobs and the careers and the pathways for that younger, diverse generation to come through to some of those green sector jobs that can lean towards being white and male and lack a bit of diversity. So I just wondered if there's some synergy there between what that fund can do with some of the skills strategy work that you're wanting to do as well.
I think there's an item coming up on the skills strategy, isn't there? So we might sort of pick up that then. But I think the wider point is on the Nature Fund. We're obviously doing it very much in partnership with West of England Nature Partnership, which has all 4 unitary authorities on it, as well as a whole range of ENGOs as well. So absolutely, those are the sorts of things that we would want to make sure are part and parcel of the conversation. We're looking at a relatively small number of large landscape scale interventions through the fund. So these will be opportunities there will be all sorts of opportunities to create those kind of skills pathways as part of what we're doing. So we're looking at big, significant strategic interventions, which is part of the work that the West of England Nature Partnership's already been doing through their local nature recovery strategy, which has a pipeline as part of it. So absolutely, and welcome already the strong engagement from the UAs through the West of England Nature Partnership. So I hope we can continue with that.
Thank you. Okay, and I wasn't sure whether it was whether it came under delivery assurance or investment fund and grant assurance. I wondered, and I couldn't see anything in the papers on this current latest status of the Creative Growth Fund, which is kind of 25 million, isn't it? So Pete, I just wondered whether you could give us an update on how is that starting to be distributed? It's a lot of money.
Yeah, the programme is being stood up. We're got the governance together, and there'll be more to say soon. But obviously, we had a very extensive engagement process with over 300 stakeholders. That's basically now turning into a programme. So we had an MOU with DCMS. We need to make sure that when we start it, it does actually ensure that people can see exactly what it's going into. So we can bring a future update to this committee if you'd be interested. A briefing we'd be happy to organise. But as I say, it's being stood up through Annabelle Smith, who's our lead on partnerships and stakeholders now, and Ben Mosley, who's, as you know, our Operations and Delivery Director. So between Annabelle and Ben, that's going on right now. It's being mobilised.
Okay. More questions for Pete. Pete, did you want to say anything? I wasn't quite sure whether you'd combined investment fund and delivery assurance, or whether you want to say something specific about delivery assurance.
Only that it's the standard report that outlines the changes to the investment fund programme. The change requests have all been through the joint regional directors forum that Stephen mentioned. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? There's also one additional recommendation in the report which relates to flexibility for risk budgets for schemes in delivery within the CRSTS programme to try and make that delivery more fleet of foot.
Just a general comment, and this is actually a bit of praise, because obviously we all got death by paperwork on this one. But actually, I did find when I was going through the various grants, and you've got the whole list and there's sheet after sheet of all the grants, and actually to have an explanatory note at the end of what each one of those grant titles meant was really useful. And just thank you.
Thank you. That was something that we specifically asked for as a committee,
and I was very happy.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And on that same note, I mean, thank you very much, Pete. I wanted to pick up on, the fact that we've got 700 pages of reports. I think this is unusual because we've had a kind of flurry of strategic activity, but I think we're also moving from a phase of a lot of kind of planning and strategy generation into more as a phase as an authority of operationalizing and delivery. And something that I've said and that we've raised as a committee before is that having a kind of a quarter by quarter report on a business plan with a limited number of key metrics will really help both the focus of the organisation and the focus of this committee. And so Stephen has suggested that in the autumn that you report to us on the kind of the limited number of KPIs, quarterly business plan reporting. Do you want to say a little bit about it, Stephen? Just so that I can kind of give the committee confidence that we are trying to focus down from these 700 pages of meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So as I've said before, the foundational documents on which the organisation operates have been completely remade in the last 12 months, from a growth strategy, investment plan, outcomes framework. That's being mirrored internally by standing up a lot of performance data. We are talking to our staff all the time about how we need to drive performance and basically use information to make better decision making. And so our own need for that data is even greater than yours, I would suggest, because we are still playing catch up as an organisation that was very much in transactional mode, responding to individual decisions made by committees in a different era to one that needs to look at its overall performance in the round. So as you suggest, we've done a lot of work in the first quarter of this year, or sorry, I should say the last 3 months of this year. We are now just about to go to our staff to give them an update on what does that mean for our organisational operating model. Very happy to bring an update on that detail if the committee is interested in between now and the autumn, because as I say, we're going to be talking to our staff a lot over the next 6 weeks or so. And that will allow us to start to produce, I think, much more granular, much more high quality performance information for you, indeed mirroring what we want from the autumn. And that performance function sits firmly within Ben Mosley's area, operations and delivery, but works very closely with Jess's area and George there, sitting there, performance evaluation. So it's a very, very focused piece of work going on right now. And I very much look forward to bringing that information to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's also in line with what the auditors said about needing that extra focus. So it'd be good to see that coming in the autumn. Thank you. So we're now moving on to the forward plan of regional strategic work. And we've got a number of items with Jess Lee and with George Margerson. So Jess, do you want to sort of give us a little bit of a flavour for the forward plan of the regional strategic work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. So I'm Jess Lee, I'm Director of Strategy here at the Combined Authority. So the first paper that I'm bringing is this forward a plan of regional strategic work, as you say, Chair. This is a regular paper that we've been bringing to the committee since the beginning of the year. And the purpose of it is to ensure that there is visibility of all the strategic work that is underway within the organisation, so people have an opportunity to engage with it at an early stage rather than just presenting you with fait accompli, if you like, when we get to the end of that work. There are a number of bits of work outlined in the table that is on page 135 of your pack. The first two of them, the skills strategy and the investment plan, we are also on the agenda for the meeting, so I think we're going to come on to them. Charlie and George are with me to talk about those in detail. But I just want to pause on the investment plan as well as the plan itself. That agenda item also asked the committee to note the investment prospectus, which is a pipeline of private sector investment opportunities for the region. The way that we're trying to think about this is as a very much of a living document, a living exercise where we're constantly refining and evolving those private sector investment opportunities. We did publish it about 2 weeks ago in time for UK Reef, which is a big investment conference that the Combined Authority attended in Leeds a couple of weeks ago, and it was really well received. But it's very much a developing, living exercise, and we will just sort of hit print whenever the need arises on that. Other things that are within the paper, the committee will be receiving much more detailed work on over the coming months. So the spatial development strategy, the transport strategy and bus plan, and also the sector plans. So these are the plans that will come out of the growth strategy, setting out the interventions that we want to be making to support the key sectors that are outlined in the growth strategy. The sector groups that support our business board are in the process of getting up and running, and they will be helping us to develop that suite of sector plans, and they will be coming over the course of the autumn and into the early part of next year. So that's what the paper does. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Jess on that forward plan? Councillor Weston.
Just reiterating what I said earlier, it'd be good to get briefings on some of the stuff coming in October, because they're going to be very chunky.
Yes. Thank you. Can I ask about the business board that you mentioned?
Yes.
And who will be on that, how people are selected? Because obviously we've had the decline of the LEP, is that right?
That's right. So the business board was established, well, the chairs of the business board, who there are two co-chairs, Nick Sturge and Joe Daly. They were appointed by the mayor as her business advisors for a 1-year period in September of last year. We subsequently stood up a business board. We had a process of an open process of application from across the region, and all our unitary authority colleagues were asked to ensure that the business community across the region had visibility of that opportunity to apply. So the business board had its first meeting in February, and they've met once since. And there are a range of roles across the business board, but 5 of those roles are essentially chairs of sector groups. So we have 5 people who are representing the key sectors from the growth strategy. So we have one on advanced manufacturing, that's Imran Khawaja from Airbus. We've got clean energy, which is chaired by Anne Cousins. From Arup, we've got the creative industries that Helen Argo from Ardman is chairing for us. And then digital technology, Nigel Toon from Graphcore is chairing that one. And the everyday economy sector group is chaired by Heather Frankham, and they, as well as chairing their own individual groups, represent those sectors on the business board, along with the unitary authority leaders and a range of other people. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the spatial development strategy, just so that I'm clear, is this the overall strategy that sets out where we hope to build homes, have industrial sites and that kind of thing over the so this was something that has been absent for a few years now, and in the meantime our local authority, for one, and I presume others, have progressed their own local plans, so presumably there will be, those will be taken into account now when developing this spatial plan, as opposed to the other way around, which is how it might have been if this had come forward sort of 4 years ago.
Yeah, so John, who was with us, but I think has now gone, is leading the development of the SDS and is working very closely with unitary authority colleagues to ensure that there is alignment between local plans and the SDS. There is a requirement for us, a legal requirement for us to produce an SDS as a combined authority. So it's a process that we're, really focused on ensuring we do effectively and swiftly and in line with the requirements from the UA processes.
Thank you. Any further questions on the strategy forward plan? No. In which case we'll move on to the investment plan. And George, you're going to talk us through this a little bit and then take questions on that.
Shall I just give a headline and George can help me with any questions? So the investment plan paper is seeking committee's approval to the 2026 investment plan. This is the first time we've taken this approach. And I think there was a bit of discussion earlier, wasn't there, about how what we're seeking to do here is to be really clear about how we align the outcomes that we're aiming for as a result of the growth strategy and our other sort of strategic plans with the resources that are available to us. So a really clear line of sight. So we can be purposeful in the way that we prioritise our funding. This is the first time we've done this. We are very much learning how this works. We're keen to ensure that we are on the front foot, ready for receiving the integrated settlement, which, as Helen mentioned earlier, we're hoping to be receiving from the 2028 financial year. But the way that will be delivered to us is under these headings that are set out by government, which is the same framework that we've used for the investment plan. The plan has been developed with our unitary authority colleagues, and it reflects all of the things that we have committed to through plans and strategies and other bits of work that are underway. It will be an evolving rolling plan, so we intend to do it again every year, and that is the opportunity to add any other priorities that emerge into that plan. It's an evolving exercise. I think that is the main headlines, isn't it, George? Yeah. So George is here, who has been the author. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And can I ask about the process of sort of consultation that have you taken this, for example, to the advisory boards?
We have, yes.
Yeah.
And we will continue to do that, but have it on the advisory board agendas as we work through next year, because there's a lot of work to do, even once the plan has been agreed here to kind of flesh it out.
Thank you. So questions on the investment plan? Councillor Rippington?
Yeah, thanks. Obviously a lot in there, but just on page 280, integrated ticketing, I just wanted to ask, the focus seems to be about multiple operators and being able to use tickets across multiple operators, but I'm assuming that there's more to it than that. I'm particularly wondering about the focus of being able to have one ticket that will basically take you wherever you want to go on any mode of transport, even if it means swapping several times from one mode of transport to another. You'll be able to buy one ticket to get you from A to B, and if that means you have to get a bus, then another bus, then a train, that one ticket will be valid on that whole thing. Is that what we're talking about by integrated ticketing?
Yeah, I think that's my understanding. Yeah.
Sorry, just to introduce myself, I'm George Morrison, Head of Analysis and Valuation at the Combined Authority. So yeah, I believe that's the long-term intention with that work stream, and what we've captured here is the sort of immediately agreed activity that's in place, and as the work develops, we'll make sure that the investment plan then reflects that sort of longer-term aspiration.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Toby?
Thanks, Chair. I guess with a report as all-encompassing as this, we're at risk of asking questions about absolutely anything that the Combined Authority does. So I'll steer away from doing that. I was just reflecting on the title of the document, investment plan. I guess the word investment is in line with the government's kind of rhetoric at the moment about growth and everything. So I can see where that word comes from, although it's perhaps more than just investment, really. It's kind of what are the things we're going to do? And obviously doing things costs money, and that is investment, fine. But then I was reflecting on whether it's really a plan. Because for me, we have strategies, we have plans. A strategy is what and why, and the plan is how and when. And for me, this document contained more of the what and the why than the how and the when. It doesn't contain any specifics on the actual costs of these things. It just gives a generic view of whether it will be grant funding or blended funding, that kind of thing. But doesn't give any real timescales for most of the items. So I guess I was just struggling to see the purpose and whether it really there's any kind of affordability check for all of this, because that's perhaps where it could have added some use from my perspective. If all of these lovely nice things listed in a 150-page document, are they actually affordable in the next 10 years? The report doesn't tell me that. So am I missing something about what its purpose is?
Yeah, so I think that's obviously true. It doesn't have the detail of the costs and the timings, but what it gives us is a foundation that we can build those things on, and the process for identifying and discussing all of those, the detail under each programme, so that we would envisage that future iterations of this get closer to setting out that detail, which the investment strategy from October last year was calling for.
I think the other thing that it does is give us visibility across the suite of activity that we have underway about where we have more or less activity underway, which allows us to think about how we ensure the balance is right on that front. I take the point that it's not as detailed as ultimately we hope it will be, but as I said, this is the first time we're trying to shift to a new way of working, and we will aim to get there. It's just that it can't all be done in one step. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's it is useful to have that collation of all the activities in one place. Don't get me wrong. I think perhaps a useful step would be that there's some items in there which might be £100,000 of spending, and there's some items in there that might be £100 million of spending. So just kind of some order of magnitude for each one to allow you to really make that comparison between directorates, between priorities.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Christian.
Yeah, I just want to check that officers, I'm talking about the 7S Street growth zone, which is mentioned. I think we all support economic growth, but just checking officers are conscious of the historical sort of sensitivities around both the environmental side of the area and also residential clashes with economic growth, particularly the 57 consent. It's not going to go down that route today, but yes, there are sensitivities in some areas of that zone, which I think we do need to be conscious of.
Fine, I think absolutely, and the work on the growth zones through the delivering the growth strategy is happening in parallel to this as well, and with the SDS also, there's also an overlap there in terms of the sort of planning side of things. I absolutely take the point.
Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Chair. It was actually quite interesting, this one. I did find it a little strange to see the Severn Estuary tidal barrage included in the West of England prospectus, since I thought that was combining South Wales to Somerset. I just wondered if we were annexing a little more of Somerset than we originally thought. So that was outside of our area. And then I noticed when we're talking about growth in the region, we don't mention the airport at all. Is that elephant in the room just too toxic to put in the prospectus for us? The prospectus itself, by the way, I did actually think was quite exciting. I mean, there's devils in the detail in a lot of these, but I just thought those were two things that jumped out at me.
Okay.
The North Somerset Growth Corridor is very important, Councillor Weston, as I'm sure you realise, with things like EPIC, the new campus. We talked about, obviously, the possibilities of mass transit, so I think it does feature. As for tidal, well, we obviously work beyond boundaries. I mean, I think floating offshore wind's quite a long way outside our boundary, and we talk about that too. So this is obviously going to be a significant project for our region, even when it does happen. And I think the Mayor is very unapologetic in her support for it. It's something she's talked to the leader of the Cardiff Capital Region about, talked to her colleagues in the Welsh Assembly Government about, and indeed the leader of Somerset, who we met recently. I think the significance for our region of that project would be significant, huge if it went ahead.
And I'm assuming that it's still early days, certainly on the tidal. So we are discussing it with ports and things like this and everything else.
Very much so, yes. Thank you. And we do think in terms more of lagoons these days rather than giant concrete structures across the whole.
Thank you. I mean, it's a very impressive, detailed piece of work, and there's also, we'll need iterations. I notice on some of the KPIs. I mean, I think some of the KPIs feel a bit raw at the moment. I mean, on the number of young people intending to progress to FE, HE destinations post-support, I don't think we'd want a KPI which said, I'd like to go to university. That feels that it's a bit mushy. And so when it comes to the process that we were talking about earlier of tightening up the KPIs, we need to know that the rigor has gone into the metrics that we're going to be using, and that we're going to be collecting the data and looking at them on an ongoing basis.
I think with the KPIs, there's a challenge between having something that is really specific and meaningful, but also having something that is measurable and that we can access the data to be able to prove. So there's a bit of a sort of tension there that we will absolutely work through and make sure that we get them to a place where they are as meaningful as possible, but also we have access to the data that will allow us to measure them. Would that be right, George?
Yes, absolutely. And the other point would be that each of the programs in this will need to, this isn't a funding document, so they'll need to move forward to a business case. And in the course of working through that, we need to be much more specific, as you say, on the measurements.
So, Tim, and then we can move on to the skills strategy.
Yeah, just a very small thing. Under the bus network improvements, I'm surprised under current activities it doesn't mention the millions of pounds that we're currently spending on upgrading infrastructure in the regions. Certainly in Bristol, CRSTS is delivering a lot of infrastructure improvements right now, and I would have thought that would have been mentioned in here, unless it comes under reliability and punctuality improvements. But we are spending a lot of money at the moment on building bus lanes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think the principle of it is covered elsewhere in the plan, and also we didn't list absolutely everything that we're currently doing, given that it's already quite a long document, as you'll appreciate. But it's trying to make sure that we've got the hooks in for the future activity.
Thank you. And I think now we'll move on to the skills strategy. So who's presenting that?
So Charlie's going to join us while he does. So the skills strategy, which is being the committee is being asked to approve, follows on from the growth strategy, and it sort of sets out our ambition for how the skills system will support residents and business to maximise the opportunities available to us as a region. I think so. It's structured in 3 core pillars. One is around supporting young people into clear pathways into future jobs. There's one about helping adults to overcome barriers to work, and then one about lifelong learning, ensuring residents can upskill and retrain throughout their lives. There's a big theme in here, which was alluded to in the conversation earlier, around work readiness and employability, and the West Back, which Helen spoke about, is one of the sort of strands of work that we have there. And then linking back to the point that Councillor King made earlier around pathways into jobs in various sectors, including food production or wider kind of clean green energy type roles. We're kind of grounding this strategy in the priority growth sector, so we're really clear about what each of those sectors need in terms of skills from our residents, and how we can be really clear with our residents about what the pathways into those opportunities might be and how they might be able to access them. So it sort of seeks to link those things up. And it also focuses on the role of the combined authority as a sort of system convener. We don't have the levers necessarily over everything that is in here. This is about ensuring that as a region we're working together. Charlie did an enormous exercise in engaging with people from across the region, including the unitary authorities, the skills providers and others, to ensure that what we have here is something that the region sort of recognises. So I think I'll stop there, and Charlie's here for any questions.
And Charlie, what's your role, please? Welcome.
Hi, thanks. I'm Charlie Garnett. I'm in Jess's team. I'm a senior policy manager at Combined Authority.
Welcome very much this detailed report. I particularly liked a lot of the kind of the very grounded examples of real people in real situations. There were so many of those. It kind of gave you a real flavour of these life experiences across the region. I had lots of questions, some of which I forwarded you via email, and I feel that we may need more time on this outside this meeting. You kindly offered, a briefing session if we'd like one. So I am conscious of time, and let's take questions, but also recognise this is a very big area which we'll be coming back to. So open it up to questions, but I might need to kind of constrain the amount of time we're talking about it and say we're going to have to take this outside the meeting. So, Councillor Wells.
This is hopefully a short one. What consultation was there with the portfolio holders and the political side, each of the constituent authorities?
Thank you. So we had a couple of sessions, firstly through the advisory board. So we had one particularly looking at future devolution, and then one specifically on the skills strategy itself and drafts of that, and then also through the business board, which the leaders are on. We had a couple, I think, a briefing as well as a full board session, and then I guess throughout the process we were working quite closely with local authority colleagues who were briefing their respective politicians.
Okay, can I ask what consultation you had with the trade unions?
Yeah, we engaged a few times, particularly with TUC. So we're working closely with them. They've come to us with a few things as well, but they were very kind in inputting and also offering some feedback on the strategy. And we got some further conversations to pick up with Innis and the like at TUC.
Okay. Thank you. And can I also ask about the likelihood that you think that more responsibilities will be coming into the area? I mean, the mayor alluded to it slightly. If you could say a little bit about that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, why don't I start, and then hard to predict, but the direction it is going in one direction in terms of devolution. I think from a starting point, I think the mayor mentioned earlier the integrated settlement, which gives us that flexibility, and I think everyone's kind of aware, particularly in the employment skills space, that those flexibilities from funding streams, the lack of flexibility has been a big issue. So just having that flexibility is a big thing in itself. The second thing is probably around the increasing things around employment support, and particularly in the needs space. So we work quite closely with the Melbourne Review team as they've been doing their report, and we've done a skills strategy to align what we're saying. And they had the diagnostic report last week, and we know there'll be a solutions report, which we think will say more in the autumn. So we maybe potentially expect some more responsibilities or some more thinking in that space. And then I think the third thing, and I think the mayor mentioned this, the thing that the majority of mayors are all pushing quite hard for is 16 to 19, and having those kind of powers, responsibility or funding to intervene a little bit earlier, which is really crucial in this region in particular. I think they're probably the main kind of three things. I don't know if you know. No.
Okay, I mean, that's quite impressive that you've been liaising with the Melbourne team at a national level to sort of, align with national priorities as well. I also wanted to sort of kind of understand, labour force productivity is obviously kind of a key part of any skills strategy. It doesn't seem to have particular emphasis in the priorities that we're identifying. And I just wondered where you saw, raising labour force productivity sitting in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the first thing is, I guess, it's in the outcomes framework. So sometimes we don't draw out everything in the outcomes framework, but it's a big part of priority 1 outcome framework. And we recognise when we sit down and write a skills strategy that things like transport are crucially important, things like some of the enterprise support are going to be crucially important. So it's recognised in that, and then we don't go into detail from the outcomes framework. But I think in terms of labour market productivity, the key things in this strategy from the skills intervention side are we want to make sure our training is probably better aligned with what employers need. And so that's obviously having people with the right skills is crucial. The second is we think it's around that work readiness that I think Jess mentioned. So we hear a lot, particularly from young people, particularly from employers employing young people, that they're sometimes very qualified technically, but potentially don't have all the skills that you're expected in a workplace. And that's actually crucial to productivity, because the longer you take to train someone up, etc. We hear from employers anecdotally that sometimes they're hiring people to manage the people they're taking on because they don't necessarily have those skills. And then I think the third thing probably to highlight is the kind of lifelong learning and expecting people to keep changing and changing skills as they go through. And then in the final kind of pillar of the strategy on lifelong learning, we talk quite a lot about the changing labour market and AI, robotics, automation, but particularly talk about how skills like critical thinking, like judgment, are going to be essential to that kind of new world. So we think that giving people those skills, as well as accepting that the economy and the labour market's changing quickly, are going to be kind of key drivers of productivity.
Thank you. I'll pick some of my other questions up outside. I don't want to hog too much of the meeting. Oh, Ellie.
Thank you. So I guess this is a bit of a thorny one, but I'm just thinking about some of the other barriers that employers are talking about in terms of hiring young people at the moment, things like VAT, business rates, raising of national minimum wage, and how that can be challenging, incentivising the employment of younger people. And then you talk about your ask, where employees who benefit from public funding and investment and contracts, your ask of them to kind of return by investing in those young people. Do you feel like that's enough to overcome some of those other challenges? Where are conversations around feeding back on some of those challenges to central government as well?
Yeah, I think that's the heart of it, isn't it? We're very much aware, we're really pleased that in the Melbourne Review, they recognise that demand side is the driving factor, and that in the skills pace, we want to ensure people are ready for work, but if the demand's not there, it's really difficult. So I think what we're trying to say on the employer side is, particularly in the west of England, we recognise that there's loads of employers who really want to do the right thing. And what we want is to try and give these employers, when they can take on young people who they can be confident have those life skills, those work skills that they can take on, and where we can potentially use our levers strongest is where we have where they're getting public money. I think on the demand side, it's kind of crucial that we do what we're going to say in the growth strategy to drive that demand, because we can do the supply side and ensure young people have the skills that needed, and we can ensure that we're giving them the information that they can get, that getting skills needed for the future jobs as well that are out there, rather than jobs that might not be around. But we're going to have to keep focusing on demand side, and it's really tricky. I know the Mayor's super keen, this a huge priority for her, this agenda, and is talking to government about it, and as I mentioned, the Melbourne Review as well. So yes, we will continue lobbying government on the kind of young people side of things, and probably a kind of host of factors. So to give an example, I think some of you will be aware, there's a lot of talk at the moment, and I know the Mayor's written to government about apprenticeships, and when a young person gets apprenticeships, how it can impact a family benefit, and that can be hugely challenging. So we'll continue to pick up those issues that we see playing out in the local labour market and try and raise them.
Fine. I mean, I'm happy to ask it afterwards. I'm probably going to ask a stupid question. Everyone will look at me like I'm a moron, or it'll just reinforce their image of me. Mine's actually about transport to education on this, because there seems to be a lot of put in this. You mentioned the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer in it. Am I right in thinking that's 18 to 21-year-olds is the Trailblazer? Yeah, excellent. What about for those 16 to 18? That I'm not sure they're covered by free bus travel at the moment on anything. There seems to be a gap because we're providing free bus service for under 16s, but then there's a gap for 2 years, and then we're potentially providing free bus travel 18 to 21. Have I got that right, or are we doing anything about that gap?
Yeah, I probably can't fully answer that, but the youth guarantee, you're right, is 18 to 21, and then obviously kids go free in the school holidays as well. I don't know if there's anything you can add apart from being aware.
Yeah. Actually, getting kids to college is one of the biggest gaps at the moment. It's a real pain in my posterior. I'm sure other councillors have it too.
I think that's right. I think we'll need to take that one away, if that's all right.
Yes. We're now on to the establishment of people authority status and expansion of regulations. Sorry. We're now on to the established mayoral strategic authority status and expansion of WECA, which Rachel, you're going to talk to.
Tracy's going to start. I'll start off. So Rachel's here for two papers. The first one being established mayoral strategic authority status application. So this seeks the committee's support for the mayor to submit the application to government for established status. There has been a change in the process following the royal assent of the Devolution Act, which has gone in our favour, which means now that government have confirmed that there has been a shift in the eligibility criteria for authorities wishing to apply for established status. What that means for us is that previously an authority had to be 18 months out of a best value notice or a similar intervention in order to apply. But they have now clarified the guidance to say that if there has been a change in political leadership since the authority exited the BVN or whatever equivalent process, then the Secretary of State has the ability to be able to disapply that criteria on eligibility, which obviously is really positive for us. And so we are now able to proceed to make the application. The submission of the application is a mayoral decision, but the support of the committee is going to be an important sort of demonstration to government of the wider partnership support for this approach, which is why we're taking the paper to committee this week. And Rachel's here, the expert, to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Rachel? No, reassuring that that's happening at speed. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Can we go then straight on to the expansion of WECA?
Yep, absolutely. So this paper represents the final sort of committee decision point in the process of the expansion of the combined authority, and it follows the public consultation that ran earlier in the year and the decision at the North Somerset Council meeting on the 12th of May to support the expansion. There are complex reasons as a result of the Devolution Act as to why that decision point is now June. We had previously thought that it would be in the autumn, but the Devolution Act has changed the timetable for decisions, so that's why we are taking it now. As set out in the paper, we've had over 1,000 responses to the public consultation, more than half of which were supportive of expanding the combined authority, and there were some valuable points that were raised as a result of the consultation as to how we work together and various things, but the conclusion has been that there was no need to change the proposal itself as a result of the comments raised. So the proposal needs to be submitted to government by the mayor and the leader of North Somerset together, but the agreement around the committee table will be important in demonstrating the wider approval of that as a way forward. So yes, that's that one.
Thank you. Can I ask, in light of the paper now and the decisions that have been made, what do you think the timeline actually looks like for North Somerset joining, and what are the risks of the timetable falling over?
we're at the mercy of government and parliament, so timetable is not entirely clear, but our expectation would be that it is potentially achievable within this calendar year, more or less definitely achievable within the financial year. Risks are, I guess, as ever with these things, events.
Thank you. Other questions about the expansion? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I mean, it's long overdue. I mean, the progress has been glacial at times, because I remember talking about this when I was first on this committee, 2021 to 2023. So it's glad that we can see light at the end of the tunnel on this finally. The questions I raised earlier to the mayor was my hope that we don't see this as the end of the process, and we keep our options open, our minds open to potential growth beyond this, because it is the government's stated ambition that all areas of the country will become covered by combined authorities. And they've already stated their doubts about the Heart of Wessex proposals. So yes, it's are we keeping an open mind in going forward beyond this about potential avenues for future growth?
So I think, as Helen said earlier, that let's achieve this first. As you say, it's been a long time coming. We've had various attempts at expanding the combined authority that have been not been successful for one reason or another. So I think we need to get this one done, and then I think everybody has an open mind, but there's no formal arrangements in place for expansion beyond that. But I wouldn't ever say never.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much, Jess and Rachel. And John, I think you're back to talk about the Brabazon West Innovation Art Newtown and the Brownfield, well, a couple of other items as well. So tell us about the Brabazon and Western Innovation Art Newtown and the latest decisions.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So sorry, I didn't say earlier, I'm John Wilkinson, I'm Director of Place at the Combined Authority. So this is really providing a report on the next stage with the New Towns programme that, as you will know, we are part of. So background to this is that we are in the final 7 proposed locations for a new town. So the West Innovation Arc is one of those 7. Those have all been put forward for a strategic environment assessment by the government, and we are expecting a final decision at some point later this year on whether or not we are formally going to be announced as a new town. A huge amount of work is going on between us, Homes England, MHCLG and South Gloss Council as a partnership. And what we're starting to do is to put in place some of the groundwork that we know we're going to have established when the announcement is made in the summer. And I should say, obviously it's subject to a consultation, but I think the mood music is positive. But obviously we await that formal decision. One of the key things which will be a requirement of a new town is to put in place some form of kind of separate delivery function, organisation, entity in order to take those new towns forward, given the scale that is proposed to be developed there. We've been working very closely with South Gloss Council and Bristol City Council, but obviously South Gloss is where the majority of the land is. And what we've set out in this report is the steps towards putting in place the sort of final entity. But we're obviously not there yet. We're not ready to make that decision. We need to understand whether or not, we need to have the decision around the new town. We need to understand exactly what that means, what the benefits are going to be, and we don't yet have that. So we're not ready to make any formal decisions about, for instance, a mayoral development corporation. But we do think it's important, and it's what the paper is requesting, approval to designate the West Innovation Arc as a non-statutory mayoral development zone. And you can see set out in the paper at paragraphs 10 and 11 are what that means in reality. So just to sort of assure yourselves and others who are interested in this, there's no formal planning powers, for instance, that come to a mayoral development zone. Really, it's an entity that we can start to kind of bring people together to kind of focus conversations and discussion and establish a joint delivery team. So really, that's what this report is seeking, is endorsement for us to establish that mayoral development zone, and sets out what that would mean in reality for us.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will be shocked that I have an opinion on this. I've got no problem with what's being suggested. I would just like to flag up, I know most of this is in South Gloucestershire. Bit of it is in Bristol, and I've got a vested interest because the bits in Bristol is essentially my bit, as Henbury, Brentry, and a chunk of Southmead. And on one of the notes, you actually say here, you need to ensure that existing communities benefit from existing and future growth through regeneration, improved infrastructure, and access to jobs. Invariably, what we're finding at the moment is we're being done to and not with. So we're getting the sticky end here. We're not really enjoying it very much. So possibly when this committee is looking to make its comments, if it could underline the need for existing communities, whatever side of the border, to be brought along this journey as well. So we do actually feel some of the benefits. We are consulted, our concerns are listened to, because at the moment it all feels a bit nebulous to us, where we're getting, you know, years of roadworks, concerns about parking, and not much else. So if that could potentially just be flagged. And I know that will be shared by colleagues cross-party in North Bristol.
Will do, and thank you for that clear ask, Mark. Councillor Edison.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself agreeing completely with Councillor Weston's comments, because Stoke Gifford is right in the middle of this Western innovation arc, and again, it's a definite feeling we are being done too. But I have a more specific concern, which is I'm looking at the number of people. We're talking about a 17,000 capacity arena, and more than 6,500 homes on Brabazon alone. And I would translate that to needing to move possibly 17,000 to 20,000 people around Brabazon in a very short amount of time, particularly after an arena event when everybody's trying to get home, or at rush hour when everybody's trying to get to work. And I'm therefore somewhat concerned that the section on transport here says that there will be some strategic junction improvements and some significant bus service improvements. And I do wonder how significant bus service improvements would have to be to shift that number of people in the amount of time we're talking about. So I have some concerns that the transport section needs some more detail, and I have raised this with South Gloss officers as well, because we are talking about moving huge numbers of people, and if we push them onto the road network in cars, it will be complete gridlock in North Bristol and South Gloucestershire.
Thank you.
You could answer that, John, and we've got 10 minutes left in the meeting.
Sorry, yeah, just quickly, just on that point, obviously the 6,500 and the arena are already consented by South Gloss Council, so there's nothing in here that is not already consented, and transport assessments will have been done in particular in relation to the arena as part of that. But I take the wider point. This is a transport-led regeneration programme, and it's absolutely critical that we get the transport elements right, which is why we're working so closely with National Highways and other government agencies, DFT, to make sure that we get that investment. That's what we're principally asking for, is investment in our transport network, both public and car-based, to enable us to go beyond what is the currently consented scheme.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I could move us on now onto the Brownfield Housing Fund, which we covered a little bit at the start of the meeting in Mayor's questions.
Yep, so very briefly, so this is a new, first time we've had it, £45 million fund from government to support us to unlock what are currently stalled sites As has been mentioned, we've been working really closely with Homes England and via our strategic place partnership with all of our unitary authorities to identify where those stalled sites are, and to start to get under the skin to understand what those viability constraints will be, and that will be those will be the sort of priority program through which we deliver this. We may do some things direct. We may do other things via the Future Places Fund, which is the co-investment model that we're working up at the moment alongside pensions investment. And I think as was already spoken about in Mayor's questions, clearly we will be looking at issues around subsidy control in any investment decisions that we make. I think there was a question earlier around governance on this. Just to say quickly, one of the things that we are working on at the moment is the governance around how we make decisions on what the appropriate investments will be. And the clear lesson that is there to be learned from other similar programs and funds is the vital importance of us having an independent investment committee that has expert specialists who are suitably qualified in making those kind of investment decisions. So we'll be bringing back a report later this summer on exactly the governance that will sit around this, but at the heart of it will be an independent investment committee who will be qualified to make decisions on whether or not we're making sensible investments, alongside obviously the political decision making as well.
Thanks, Chair. So as I said earlier to the Mayor, I'm not against this in principle. We do need this investment, and certainly if the government is going to invest money in our region, then we should absolutely accept that money. But I will reiterate my concerns about the level and the scale of the delegation that's being made at a stage in the programme where that detail hasn't been fleshed out. The things you just said are good, but they're not in the report and they're not what's being agreed to at the committee. It's a £45 million investment, and without real detail of the what the priorities are for that investment and what those governance mechanisms are, I don't think the committee should be granting that delegation at this point. I would be interested to hear the thoughts of other committee members. My recommendation would be that we recommend to the committee that they accept the first recommendation, which is that we accept the money from central government, but that they defer accepting the second recommendation until that later report comes later in the summer. And if I understand things correctly, doing it that way wouldn't actually delay the delivery of any of this funding, because it can't be delivered until that time anyway.
Any comments from other members of the committee on Councillor Wells' suggestion? Okay, or do you want to respond first?
Shall I respond just quickly? Yeah, I mean, thank you. So the primary vehicle through which we will be looking at issues around governance is the Strategic Place Partnership, which has your political representatives on it. So that's the partnership through which we're taking this. There's a subgroup who is shaping this up for us. We could strengthen the second one if that were what the committee wanted to do by mentioning the Strategic Place Partnership. I think it is important that we're able to sort of take this forward as quickly as we can, given there are timing constraints on spending the money. But that could be a mechanism that we could strengthen that.
Just wanted to note as well that the finance and the legal teams in the report also have uncertain about whether the funding can be used in the sort of proposed way. So there's just too much uncertainty around it for me at this point.
Okay, and would happy with John's suggestion that the Strategic Place Partnership is referenced? Would that cover what your ask is?
I'm not really familiar enough with it at this point to be able to say.
Okay. I'll kind of capture that in the notes, and then
I think we have to look at the paper that has been presented to the committee and what level of detail that has in it, in how the decision is made.
Okay. Any other comments regarding the kind of the partial acceptance, or our comments regarding perhaps this should be partially accepted rather than fully accepted? Okay. Well, I'll capture the ask, and then also the kind of what the offer is that's there, so that then it's clear for the committee on Friday. And I might need to understand a little bit better what you're suggesting, John. So if we could just stay for a minute or so after the meeting, thank you. Thank you. And then I think we're on to the Hicks Mastergate plan, and a few minutes left on this. So and we might need to run over a few minutes, but it won't be more than that, because I think the risk assessment framework is really a process thing rather than a content thing.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, will be familiar with Hicksgate and its significance to the region as a location, in the sense that it's a place that kind of cuts across Bath and North East Somerset, Bristol and South Gloucestershire as a kind of place. And so we had been approached by mainly Baines and Bristol City Council, given that it's a location that spans across more than one local authority boundary, to do a joint piece of work to look at how we could make sure that we are maximising the opportunities that are going to be coming forward in that part of the region, given there are most of the land parcels in that area are optioned by private sector developers. We wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for us to kind of maximise our kind of housing densities, to deliver as much housing as we sensibly could, to protect the A4 corridor when it comes to mass transit and the future opportunities for that, and to make sure that there's a joined up approach when it comes to the infrastructure, the wider infrastructure around schools and other things. As you'll know, when individual land developers come forward on individual sites, the risk is that you don't take a step back and actually see what the cumulative impact of those things would be. So we've been working hard with our unitary authority partners on this joint master plan. It's non-statutory, but it will be having it at committee is a really important statement of intent for us, that we see that as a really significant location for the region, and that we want to make sure that it's delivered in the right way and in a joined up way, and support Bristol City Council and Bath and North East Somerset Council in the way that they determine any planning applications that come forward there, and support their local plan development. So that's why we're bringing it forward to committee.
Thank you. Joss, Councillor Clark.
Almost worth coming from me today, wasn't it? It's the first thing I've said right at the very end of the meeting. This is really significant, and what are you doing about communicating this with the local councillors who are involved in this area? Obviously, you've talked about it straddling 3 local authorities. What are you doing to communicate?
So principally that's through the planning application process from the local authorities, because this, as I say, this is a non-statutory kind of master plan, trying to make sure that we can bring those developers together to see the kind of bigger picture. So the primary route for consultation will be through any planning applications that come forward via Bristol City Council, Bath and North East Somerset Council.
I think you really just raised the issue here. This issue I'm driving at. This covers 3 local authorities with councillors from all 3 local authorities. You've got 2 councillors sitting here from Bristol, who it directly affects our wards. And it would be, I think it would be polite if you could offer all councillors, so the Baines, it'd be Keynsham North, wouldn't it? Who are affected, all councillors who are affected, if we could have a joint, because this is not, if I just look at the issues that affect Bristol, I'm not looking at the issues which affect the other local authorities. So this is an overview, and I just think it might be really, really useful, and you would probably get, maybe you will get less issues moving forward if you do take the time and the courtesy to communicate with us all, maybe together.
Certainly be happy to do that.
Councillor Gawley.
Second as well. I would like to agree with Joss and I hope Councillor Clark, but I think that would be really helpful, bearing in mind some of the issues that we've been having with opposition, and I think it's a question of some of the councillors understanding the wider benefits.
Yeah, and I think reading the mood of the committee, I think that's something that we could unambiguously support as a recommendation in terms of engagement with the local community, you know, as echoing what was said about Brabazon and the Western Innovation Arc. Yeah.
Sorry, just coming back, Chair. If I hadn't been sitting in the room, and if my colleague from Brislington East hadn't been sitting in the room, would you have considered doing this, actually communicating with the local councillors as an overview? Because as I keep saying, it affects, if you just talk about Bristol to Bristol councillors and you talk about Baines to Baines councillors, you're not talking about the overview, because they literally butt onto each other, all three of the projects, weren't they? All three local authorities. Would you have considered doing that unless we brought it up today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This has been a sprint in order to do this, mainly because the local authorities officers and some of the politicians were concerned about individual planning applications coming forward. So we were asked by the unitary authorities to take this approach to say, actually, how could we look at all of this in the round? So it's been a fairly quick sprint that we were asked to do by by Baines and BCC in particular. But as I say, that we've had officers from each of the local authorities on there. I will go back to those officers and I will ask what engagement had taken place, because obviously through those officers and in the regen teams, I would hope that there had already been some consultation, but I'm really happy to do more if that would be, as it sounds, would be helpful.
We've got a couple more hands, and can I get permission the meeting to go on to 10 past? Is that okay? All right, okay, thank you. So Councillor Gawley and then Councillor Clark.
Sorry, I should have also said I think it'd be very useful to consult the town councillors from Keynsham and parish councillors in the area, as well as the ward councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yep, thank you, Chair. This is just kind of flagging it for future discussions about the SDS. I think this kind of highlights how significant the 2024 Green Belt, Grey Belt reforms were. And there are major concerns across the region, I think, about how watered down our understanding of Green Belt has become. And this could be a case in point. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to ask about whether this becomes a material planning consideration, having been involved in quite a few master plans in the Bristol area and economy and skills. They've been adopted by that committee and become a material planning consideration. Does this become one by going through the WECA committee, or does it have to then be adopted? And is that the plan?
So it would not, it's non-statutory from our perspective. It will be for the local authorities to decide whether they want to adopt this as part of their local plan process. So that would be a decision for them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just very quickly. The park and ride, does that sit within the boundary of this master plan or outside the boundary of this master plan? The planned move of the park and ride to Hicksgate. So where would that be? Would that be where the transport hub is?
Yes, that's correct.
Designated on there. Okay. Thanks. And the other question is, barely a mention of affordability of homes in this master plan. Is that because it's not appropriate for a master plan, or is that a significant omission, really?
No, that would come forward through each of any planning applications that came forward for each local authority. As I say, this isn't us it has no statutory standing. It will be for each local authority to make its decisions locally. What we were asked to do was to provide an overarching framework within which they could make some of those decisions, particularly around infrastructure, but local authorities' own local policies will apply in the normal way.
Thank you. And I think that concludes that item. And actually, Jill and I decided before the meeting that we don't need to do the corporate risk framework as a kind of item to be presented on, unless anybody has any specific points that they would like to raise about it. No, in which case, it's just for me to thank members of the committee for your questions and helping me with the timekeeping of the meeting. members of the public for attending, and officers for all your work in preparing papers. Thank you very much, everybody.